A billionaire husband divorced her, saying, "You can't become a mother." 5 years later, she returned with quadruplets and a surprise. At his engagement party, her revelation shocked everyone. The bride became angry, slapped her fiancé, and broke off the engagement. What was the surprise? Watch until the end, my beautiful family. Let's start the most powerful story together. A woman's worth. Shane Martin decided on a winter morning that smelled of expensive cologne and cruelty could be measured in her ability to give him an heir. Maya Lara stood in the center of the penthouse living room, her bare feet cold against marble that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The floor stretched endlessly white around her, reflecting the grey sky through floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything in this home was cold. The furniture, the art, the man she married. Shane paced near the fireplace that had never held a real fire, his Italian leather shoes clicking with each step. He held papers in his hand, gripping them so tightly the edges crumpled. His jaw was set in that way Maya had learned to fear, the way that meant he had made a decision and nothing she said would matter. "All this time," Shane said, his voice cutting through the silence like glass breaking. "All this humiliation. Do you know what they say about me at the club? Do you know what my father's friends whisper when I walk by?" Maya wrapped her arms around herself, feeling smaller with each word. "Shane, please. The doctors said we should keep trying. They said sometimes it takes. The doctors said you can't conceive." Shane spun toward her, his handsome face twisted with disgust. "You, not me. You're the problem, Maya. You're the defect in this equation." The word defect landed like a slap. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had heard him say cruel things before, but this was different. This had the weight of finality behind it. Shane's mother, Diane, descended the curved staircase as if on cue. She wore white, always white, as though she were an angel instead of the woman who had spent years poisoning her son's ear with venom. Her pearl necklace caught the weak winter light. "Is she still crying?" Diane asked Shane, not even looking at Maya. "I told you this would be tedious." "Mother, please," Shane said, but there was no real resistance in his voice. There never was when Diane spoke. Diane finally turned her cold gaze on Maya. "My dear, you've had every opportunity. The best doctors, the best treatments. Shane has been nothing but patient with you." Maya's voice came out stronger than she felt. "Patient. He's blamed me for everything. He won't even consider that maybe what?" Shane interrupted, moving closer. "Maybe I'm the problem? Is that what you were going to say? You'd love that, wouldn't you? To shift the blame onto me." "That's not what I meant," Maya said, backing up until her spine hit the marble column. "I just think we should both get tested again, together." The specialist said, "I don't need to be tested." Shane threw the papers onto the glass coffee table where they scattered like accusations. "I know there's nothing wrong with me. My father had multiple children. His father had even more. The Martin men don't have problems, Maya. Martin women don't either. You're just not one of us." The cruelty in those words made Maya's knees weak. Not one of us, after everything she had sacrificed. Every gala where Diane had criticized her dress. Every dinner where Shane's friends had made jokes about her background. Every lonely night in this cold, beautiful prison. "Sign them," Shane said, gesturing to the papers. "The divorce papers. My lawyers have been very generous. You'll have enough money to disappear quietly and start over somewhere else. Somewhere you can be whatever you're meant to be." Maya stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. "You're really doing this?" "After everything. After everything." Shane laughed, the sound harsh and metallic. "What exactly did you give me, Maya? What did this marriage produce? Nothing. Literally nothing." Diane moved to stand beside her son, her hand resting on his shoulder in solidarity. "Dear, this is difficult for everyone. But Shane deserves a wife who can give him children, who can continue the Martin legacy. You understand, don't you?" Maya looked between them, mother and son, united in their judgment. She thought about the woman she had been before Shane, the woman who laughed easily and dreamed boldly, the woman who believed love could overcome anything. That woman felt like a stranger now. "I loved you," Maya whispered. Shane's face softened for just a moment, something almost human flickering behind his eyes. But Diane's fingers tightened on his shoulder, and the moment passed. "Love isn't enough," Shane said flatly. "Love doesn't carry on a family name. Love doesn't sit in a nursery. Love doesn't matter when you're defective." There was that word again. Defective, as if Maya were a machine that malfunctioned, as if her entire worth could be reduced to one biological function. Maya walked to the coffee table on legs that felt disconnected from her body. She picked up the papers with trembling hands. Page after page of legal language that all meant the same thing. "You are not wanted. You are not enough. You are nothing. Do you have a pen?" she asked, her voice hollow. Diane produced one from her designer handbag with the efficiency of someone who had planned this moment. Of course she had. This whole scene had probably been rehearsed. Maya signed each page where the small red arrows indicated. Her signature looked strange to her eyes, the letters loose and wobbly, barely recognizable as her own hand. With each stroke of the pen, she felt another piece of herself die. The hopeful piece, the trusting piece, the piece that believed in forever. When she finished, Shane gathered the papers quickly, as if afraid she might change her mind. He tucked them under his arm and finally met her eyes. "I'm not a monster, Maya. I'm giving you enough to start over. To be comfortable. That's more than most men would do." The audacity of expecting gratitude made something inside Maya crack. "Comfortable," she repeated. "Yes, I'm sure the money will keep me very comfortable in whatever hole I crawl into." "Don't be dramatic," Diane sniffed. "You're young enough to find someone else. Someone whose expectations are more realistic for someone like you. Someone like you." The phrase hung in the air, heavy with implication and prejudice, and everything Diane had always believed, but never quite said outright until now. Shane walked to the front door and opened it wide. Cold air rushed in, smelling of snow and exhaust fumes and freedom. "I've had your personal belongings packed. They'll be delivered wherever you want them. You have until the end of today to collect anything else." Maya moved toward the door, each step feeling like walking through deep water. She paused in the doorway, looking back one last time at the penthouse that had been her prison dressed as a palace. Shane stood framed by the enormous windows, his mother beside him, both of them waiting for her to leave so they could continue their lives without the embarrassing weight of her existence. "You know what's funny?" Maya said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I actually believed you loved me once. I believed all of it. The romance, the promises, the forever." Shane's jaw tightened. "Maya, don't." She held up her hand. "You've said enough. You've said everything that matters. I'm defective. I'm not enough. I'm the problem." She took a breath, feeling something shift inside her chest. Something breaking, yes, but also something hardening. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Shane. I hope you get everything you think you deserve." She turned and walked into the hallway, her head high despite the tears now streaming freely down her face. Behind her, she heard Diane's voice, sharp and satisfied. "Well, that's finally done." The door closed with a sound like a coffin lid falling into place. Maya stood in the empty hallway, surrounded by walls covered in expensive art she had never been allowed to choose. She pressed her hand against her flat stomach, the stomach that had betrayed her. According to Shane, the body that had failed her, according to the Martin family and their doctors, and everyone who had an opinion about her inability to conceive. But standing there, with the ruins of her marriage sealed behind that heavy door, Maya felt something unexpected stirring beneath the devastation. Rage, not the hot, explosive kind that burns out quickly. No, this was cold and patient. This was the kind that could survive winter and wait for spring. This was the kind that remembered every word, every look, every casual cruelty dressed up as concern. Shane Martin had taken everything from her, her home, her dignity, her belief in love. He had reduced her to a single failure and cast her aside like something broken beyond repair. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had assumed she would stay broken. Chapter 2. Ashes and Whispers. The apartment Maya found was everything the penthouse wasn't, small, worn, and honest about what it was. The building sat on a street where laundromats and corner stores outnumbered boutiques, where people actually looked each other in the eye when they passed. The walls were thin enough that Maya could hear her neighbor's television through the plaster, could hear children laughing in the unit above, could hear life happening all around her in a way that felt both intrusive and comforting. She stood in the center of the empty living room, her few boxes stacked against the wall. Shane had kept everything, of course. The furniture, the art, the wedding china they had never used. Maya didn't care. She wanted nothing that carried his fingerprints. Her phone buzzed constantly on the windowsill, lighting up with notifications she couldn't bear to read. The society pages had run the story within hours of her leaving the penthouse. The headline on one particularly vicious gossip site read, "Martin Eyre ends marriage, wife's fertility issues to blame." The comments were worse. Maya had made the mistake of reading them once, standing in a pharmacy while picking up something to help her sleep. The words had blurred together into a symphony of cruelty. Gold digger, baron, used him for his money. Should have known better. Not even pretty enough to make up for it. She had abandoned her shopping basket and walked home in the rain, letting the water hide her tears from strangers who wouldn't have cared anyway. The doorbell rang, making Maya jump. She wasn't expecting anyone. For a terrifying moment, she wondered if Shane had changed his mind, if he wanted to deliver more parting shots in person. But when she opened the door, her sister Tessa stood there with suitcases and fury in her eyes. "Move," Tessa said, pushing past Maya with the force of a small hurricane. She dragged her luggage into the apartment and slammed the door behind her. "I got on the first flight out." "Don't argue with me about it." Maya opened her mouth, then closed it. Tessa stood there in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, looking nothing like the polished women who had populated Maya's life recently. She looked real. She looked like home. "I told you he was garbage," Tessa said, dropping her bags. "I told you the first time I met him, remember? At that restaurant where he corrected the waiter's pronunciation of everything on the menu?" Despite everything, Maya felt a weak laugh escape. He said he was being helpful. He was being an ass. Tessa moved through the apartment, checking the locks on the windows, the water pressure in the kitchen sink, the heating vents. "This place is small. It's what I can afford now." Tessa spun around. "What you can afford?" "Maya, he's worth millions. The settlement should have set you up for life. I signed a prenup," Maya said quietly. "Remember?" his mother insisted. "I got enough to start over, but not enough to matter to people like them." "People like them." Tessa's voice dripped with disgust. "You mean people who measure human worth in bank accounts and bloodlines?" She crossed to Maya and grabbed her shoulders. "Look at me. Look at me." Maya raised her eyes reluctantly. "You lost weight," Tessa said. "Too much weight. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't coffee?" Maya couldn't remember. Tessa pulled her into a hug so tight it hurt. "He broke something in you." "I can see it, but broken things can be reset stronger. Do you hear me? Stronger." Maya clung to her sister, finally letting herself cry without restraint. She cried for the girl who had believed in fairy tales. She cried for the woman who had endured subtle torture disguised as marriage. She cried for the future she had imagined, the children she had wanted so desperately, the family that was now just smoke and mirrors. "Why wasn't I enough?" Maya whispered against Tessa's shoulder. "Why couldn't I just be enough?" "Stop!" Tessa pulled back, her hands still gripping Maya's arms. "Stop giving him that power. He's the one who wasn't enough. He's the one who failed. Not you. Never you." But the words felt hollow. Maya had seen the pitying looks from doctors, had overheard the whispered conversations between Shane and his mother, had read her own medical charts and understood what they meant. The problem was her. The failure lived in her body, in her inability to do the one thing women were supposedly designed to do. Tessa seemed to read her thoughts. "Whatever the doctor said, whatever he told you, we're getting second opinions, third opinions, opinions from people who aren't on the Martin family payroll." "It won't matter," Maya said. "The results will be the same. Then we deal with that. But we deal with it here, away from him. Away from that poisonous family and their poisonous expectations." Tessa picked up one of the boxes and started unpacking. "First things first. We make this place livable. Then we make you livable again. Then we make a plan. They worked through the afternoon and into the evening, transforming the bare apartment into something resembling a home. Tessa had somehow packed Maya's favorite blanket, the one from college that was worn soft from use. She hung curtains that let in light but blocked the view from neighboring windows. She filled the refrigerator with actual food, not the decorative fruit that had sat in the penthouse and never been eaten. As darkness fell, they sat on the floor eating takeout from containers, the apartment warm despite the autumn chill outside. "I got a job offer," Maya said suddenly, before everything fell apart. "A non-profit in Seattle, designing affordable housing. I turned it down because Shane said it was beneath me." Tessa stopped mid-bite. "Seattle. It's probably been filled by now. It's been weeks. Or maybe it hasn't." Tessa pulled out her phone. "What's the organization called?" Maya told her, and Tessa's fingers flew across the screen. She held up the phone, showing Maya the website with a prominent "We're hiring" banner still displayed. "Call them," Tessa said. "Tomorrow. First thing. Tell them you're available. I don't know if I can start over somewhere completely new. Alone. You won't be alone. I can work remotely from anywhere. My lease is up next month anyway." Tessa set down her container and leaned forward. "Maya, listen to me. This city is full of his people, his friends, his family, his influence. Every corner you turn, you'll see reminders. Every restaurant, every street, every damn coffee shop will be a wound that won't heal." Maya knew she was right. She had already experienced it, the stares, the whispers, the sudden silences when she entered a room. The city that had once felt full of possibility now felt like a trap closing around her. "Seattle," Maya repeated, testing the word. It sounded like rain, like new beginnings, like possibility. "Seattle," Tessa confirmed. "Far enough that he can't show up drunk and regretful. Close enough that I can still get a decent cup of coffee." They laughed then, and it felt strange and wrong and necessary all at once. Maya's phone buzzed again on the counter, the screen lighting up with another notification. Another article, another comment section full of strangers dissecting her worth. Tessa grabbed the phone and powered it off. "No more. Tomorrow you get a new number. Tonight you get a good night's sleep for the first time in weeks." Maya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her bones. Tessa made up a bed on the couch, refusing to take the bedroom despite Maya's protests. As Maya lay in the dark, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling in an unfamiliar room, she felt something shifting inside her. She thought about Shane in the penthouse, probably celebrating his freedom with his mother, already planning his next steps with a more suitable wife. She thought about the life she had wanted, the children, the love, the security, all of it gone like smoke in wind. But she also thought about Seattle, about rain and fresh starts, about designing homes for people who needed them, about a version of herself that existed beyond Shane Martin's judgment and Diane's contempt. In the apartment above, children ran across the floor, their footsteps thundering through the ceiling. A television played. Somewhere down the hall, a couple argued and then laughed. Life, messy and loud and real. Maya closed her eyes and made herself a promise in the darkness. Shane Martin had taken her past, but he would not have her future. Chapter 3. The Architect of New Beginnings. Seattle rain had a different quality than rain anywhere else Maya had experienced. It didn't pour dramatically like summer storms or freeze into hostile sleet. It simply existed, constant and gentle, like a whisper that never quite stopped. Maya stood under the awning of the non-profit office, watching water bead on the leaves of the maple trees lining the street. She had been in Seattle for months now, and the rain still surprised her. Not its presence. Everyone warned you about Seattle rain, but its comfort. The way it softened the edges of everything. The way it made the whole city smell like earth and possibility. The non-profit occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial windows. Inside, drafting tables mixed with modern computers, and the walls displayed photographs of completed projects. Homes built for families who never thought they could afford walls to call their own. "Maya, can you look at these elevation drawings?" She turned to find Michael Hussey approaching with rolled blueprints under his arm. Her supervisor had the kind of face that made people trust him instantly, open and honest, with smile lines earned from actually smiling. His hands were calloused from weekend volunteer builds, paint permanently staining his cuticles. He looked nothing like Shane, and that had been a relief when they first met. "The Johnson family build," Michael said, spreading the plans across her desk. "The mother wants to make sure there's enough natural light in the kids' bedrooms. I thought you might have ideas, given your eye for spatial flow." Maya studied the drawings, her mind already working through possibilities. "If we add clear story windows here," she pointed, "and maybe a skylight in this shared hallway, it would bring light deep into the space without compromising wall space for furniture." Michael leaned in, following her finger across the blueprint. "That's perfect. This is why you're the best hire we've made in forever." He said it simply, as fact, without the patronizing tone Shane had always used when praising her. They worked side by side for the next hour, solving problems with roof pitches and load-bearing walls. Maya found herself laughing at Michael's story about a previous build where the family's dog had walked through wet concrete, leaving paw prints that they eventually incorporated into the design as a permanent feature. "Life's too short to take everything so seriously," Michael said, rolling up the completed plans. "Speaking of which, a bunch of us are grabbing dinner tonight. That noodle place on Pike. You should come." Maya hesitated. She had kept mostly to herself since arriving, throwing her energy into work and little else. Tessa had been pestering her to socialize, to rejoin the world of the living, but the thought of making small talk exhausted her. "Come on," Michael pressed gently. "You can't live on coffee and determination alone. Trust me, I tried during my divorce. It doesn't work." The word divorce hung in the air between them. Maya hadn't shared the details of her past with anyone at work beyond the barest facts. But Michael had just offered his own, casual and unashamed, like it was simply a part of his story rather than a defining tragedy. "Okay," Maya found herself saying. "Dinner sounds good." That evening, squeezed into a booth with co-workers, passing bowls of noodles and sharing stories about disastrous client meetings and construction mishaps, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in forever. Normal. Like a regular person with regular problems and regular joys. Like someone whose worth wasn't constantly being measured against impossible standards. Michael sat across from her, arguing passionately with their colleague about whether concrete or wood framing was more sustainable, his hands gesturing enthusiastically. He caught her eye once and smiled, and Maya smiled back without thinking about it. Weeks passed, then months. Maya fell into a rhythm, work during the day, occasional dinners with co-workers, weekends helping on build sites where she learned to use power tools and felt proud of her bleeding blisters. Tessa had found remote work that paid the bills and filled their small apartment with her presence and terrible cooking attempts and running commentary on the dating shows she watched religiously. Michael became a constant in Maya's days. He brought her coffee without being asked, remembered how she took it. He invited her to community build sites on Saturdays where families cried happy tears, receiving house keys. He never asked about her past, never pushed for more than she offered. He simply existed beside her, steady as rain. One evening, they worked late, finishing a grant proposal. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving them alone with the glow of desk lamps and the sound of rain against the windows. Maya's eyes burned from staring at the computer screen, and her back ached from hunching over blueprints. "That's it," Michael said, hitting send on the email. "If we don't get this grant, it won't be for lack of trying." He leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms overhead. "I don't know about you, but I'm starving." "Everything's closed by now." "Not everything." He grabbed his jacket. "Come on. I know a place. They drove through rain-slicked streets to a food truck parked near the waterfront. Michael ordered them both tacos from a vendor who knew him by name, and they sat on a bench overlooking the dark water, eating and watching boats bob in the marina. "Can I ask you something?" Michael said after a while. "You don't have to answer." Maya tensed automatically, but she nodded. "Why architecture? What made you choose this?" It wasn't the question she'd expected, not, "Why did your marriage end?" or "What happened to you?" Just a simple question about her choices, her passions, her story beyond the pain. "I grew up in a small house," Maya said slowly. "Really small, but my mother made it feel enormous. She painted the walls bright colors, hung curtains that she sewed herself, put plants everywhere. She made the space breathe." Maya smiled at the memory. "I realized later that she was doing architecture without knowing it. She was taking limitations and turning them into possibility." Michael listened without interrupting, his taco forgotten in his hands. "When I studied architecture in school, everyone was obsessed with building monuments. Museums, corporate headquarters, things that would make them famous." Maya took a breath. "But I wanted to build what my mother built. Homes, real homes for real people, places that breathed." "And then you met him," Michael said quietly. Maya looked at him sharply, but his face held no judgment, just understanding. "I met him," she confirmed, "and he had different ideas about what I should design, what I should be." He was wrong. The certainty in Michael's voice made Maya's throat tight. "You don't know what happened. You don't know." "I know you're brilliant at what you do. I know you care about every family we build for like they're your own. I know you work harder than anyone else here and never complain." Michael turned to face her fully. "I know that whoever he was, whatever he said to you, he was wrong." Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back fiercely. "He said I was defective. He said I couldn't give him what he needed, so I wasn't worth keeping." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, raw and ugly in the salt air. She waited for Michael's face to change, for pity or discomfort to cloud his eyes. But he just nodded slowly, as if she had confirmed something he'd already suspected. "My ex-wife left me for her personal trainer," Michael said. "Cliché, right? She said I was too boring, too satisfied with ordinary things. She wanted excitement and passion and someone who looked good in Instagram photos." He smiled ruefully. "I spent a year thinking she was right, that I was too boring to deserve love." "That's not true," Maya said immediately. "Exactly." Michael's eyes were serious now. "And neither is what he told you. People say terrible things when they're trying to justify their own failures. They rewrite history to make themselves the hero of a story where they're actually the villain." They sat in silence, listening to waves lap against the dock. Maya felt something loosening in her chest, some knot she'd been carrying since the day Shane handed her divorce papers. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For not treating me like I'm broken." Michael reached over and squeezed her hand briefly. "You're not broken, Maya. You're healing. There's a difference." They finished their tacos as the rain intensified, eventually running back to the car laughing as water soaked through their clothes. Michael drove her home, and when he pulled up outside her building, neither of them moved to leave immediately. "Same time tomorrow?" Michael asked. "Same time tomorrow," Maya confirmed. She watched his taillights disappear down the street before heading inside. Tessa looked up from her laptop as Maya entered, dripping water across the floor. "You're smiling," Tessa observed. "Like actually smiling. Not the fake one you do when I force you to watch my dating shows." Maya touched her face, surprised. She hadn't even realized. "It's Michael, isn't it?" Tessa closed her laptop with a knowing grin. "The supervisor you definitely don't have a crush on." "I don't have a crush. He's just nice." "Uh-huh. Nice. Sure." Tessa stood and handed Maya a towel. "Maya, honey, you're allowed to be happy again. You know that, right? You're allowed to feel things for someone who actually deserves you." Maya dried her hair roughly, avoiding her sister's eyes. It's too soon. I'm not ready. Who says you have to be ready? Maybe happiness isn't something you prepare for. Maybe it just shows up in a food truck parking lot with a man who brings you coffee and doesn't make you feel like you're constantly failing some impossible test. That night, lying in bed listening to the rain, Maya thought about Michael's hands, calloused and paint-stained and honest. She thought about the way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. She thought about the way he looked at her sometimes, when he didn't think she noticed. She thought about Shane too, but for the first time in months, he felt far away, like a bad dream fading in morning light. And somewhere between the rain and the darkness, Maya let herself imagine possibility again. Chapter 4. Love letters in blueprints. Michael courted Maya the way a craftsman approached fine work, with patience, attention and care that bordered on reverence. He didn't rush, didn't push. Instead, he showed up. Consistently, reliably, like the Seattle rain that had become the backdrop to their growing connection. He remembered small things, that Maya hated meetings before she'd had coffee, that she worked best with music playing softly, that she went quiet when she was solving difficult design problems and needed to be left alone until she emerged with solutions. On a Sunday morning when cherry blossoms turned the streets pink, Michael took Maya to a community build site across town. The family receiving the home stood to the side, a mother with children who clutched the blueprint drawings like treasure maps to a better future. "This is why we do it," Michael said softly, watching the mother's face as volunteers raised the first wall frame. This moment right here, when possibility becomes real. Maya found herself blinking back tears as the children squealed with excitement, running to peer through the framed window openings at the view they would see every morning. The mother caught Maya's eye and mouthed, "Thank you," and Maya felt something shift in her chest, a reminder that her worth existed beyond biology. Beyond what Shane had tried to convince her she lacked, Michael handed her a hammer. "Come on, you're not just designing these homes. You're building them too." They worked side by side through the afternoon, Maya's muscles burning pleasantly as she learned to drive nails straight and true. Michael worked nearby, offering guidance without condescension, his hands sure and capable. When Maya smashed her thumb and swore creatively, he appeared with ice and a smile. "You're tougher than you think," he said, wrapping her thumb gently. "I'm clumsier than I think," Maya countered. "That too, but mostly tough." As weeks turned into months, Michael wove himself into the fabric of Maya's life, so gradually she barely noticed until he was essential. He introduced her to his parents one evening, a retired couple who lived in a house filled with books and laughter and the smell of homemade bread. Michael's mother, Patricia, embraced Maya at the door like she was already family. "Michael talks about you constantly. Maya designed this. Maya solved that. Maya made everyone laugh at the meeting." She winked at her son, who had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was beginning to think he'd invented you." His father, James, was quieter but warm, asking Maya thoughtful questions about her work and actually listening to the answers. They sat around a worn kitchen table that had obviously hosted decades of family meals, and Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in forever: belonging without conditions attached. "Your son is a wonderful supervisor," Maya said, watching Michael help his mother carry dishes to the sink. "He's a better man," James said simply. Took him a while to remember that after his divorce. That woman did a number on him. He studied Maya with kind eyes. "But you're helping him remember." The directness caught Maya off guard. We're not yet," James said with a knowing smile. "But you will be. I've been married to Patricia for decades. I know what the beginning of something real looks like." Maya helped wash dishes, while Patricia asked about her family, her childhood, her dreams. She didn't ask about Maya's past marriage or why she'd moved to Seattle. She simply accepted Maya as she was. Present tense, no explanations required. On the drive home, Michael was quieter than usual. "I'm sorry if they were overwhelming," he finally said. "My mother has no filter. They're wonderful," Maya said honestly. "Your house feels like a home. Like a real home, not just a place where people store their expensive things." Michael glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Is that what your marriage was like? A storage facility for expensive things?" Maya hadn't talked much about Shane beyond that night at the waterfront. But something about the darkness of the car, the safety of Michael's presence, made the words easier. "Shane collected things," she said slowly. "Art, furniture, designer clothes, a wife who looked good at galas. Everything was chosen to impress other people. Nothing was chosen because it made him happy." She paused. "I don't think Shane knew how to be happy. I don't think his mother ever taught him." "She sounds delightful," Maya laughed despite herself. Diane Martin was many things. Delightful wasn't one of them. They pulled up outside Maya's building, but neither moved to leave the car. Rain pattered on the roof, cocooning them in watery privacy. "Can I tell you something?" Michael said. "And you can't laugh at me." "I'll try not to laugh at you," he smiled. "The day you walked into the office for your interview, I knew. Before you even spoke, before you showed us your portfolio, I just knew." Maya's heart beat faster. "Knew what?" "That you were going to matter." Michael turned to face her fully. "I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was probably just attraction to a beautiful woman and I should get over it. But then you started talking about spatial flow and natural light and designing dignity into affordable spaces. And I realized it was so much more than that." "Michael, let me finish." He took a breath. "I've been taking this slow because I didn't want to rush you. I could see you were healing from something. But Maya, I need you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm nothing like whoever hurt you before." Maya felt tears prickling her eyes. "You're not. You're nothing like him." "Good, because he was clearly an idiot." She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "He really was, wasn't he? The biggest?" Michael reached over and brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "Take all the time you need, Maya. I'm patient. I'm very, very patient." But Maya was tired of being patient. Tired of protecting herself from possibility. Tired of letting Shane's cruelty dictate her future choices. She leaned across the console and kissed Michael, feeling his surprise melt into response. The kiss was soft and tentative, and nothing like the aggressive, possessive way Shane used to kiss her. Michael kissed like he built houses, carefully, thoroughly, with attention to every detail and respect for what he was creating. When they pulled apart, both breathing harder, Michael rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for months," he admitted. "I know," Maya said. "I could tell. And yet you made me wait. I had to make sure you were real. That this was real. That I wasn't just—" She trailed off. "Rebounding?" Michael suggested gently. "Maya, if this is a rebound, rebound into me as hard as you want. I'll catch you." She kissed him again, harder this time, feeling something breaking open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight since the day she signed those divorce papers. It felt like possibility. It felt like permission to want again. It felt like the beginning of something that could actually be beautiful. Tessa was predictably insufferable when Maya floated through the apartment door an hour later. "You kissed him," she announced triumphantly. "I can tell. You have that dazed look, like you just discovered carbs after a year of kale." Maya collapsed onto the couch, unable to stop smiling. "I kissed him. And he's... Tessa, he's everything Shane wasn't. He's patient and kind, and he listens, and he doesn't make me feel like I'm constantly being judged and found wanting. So basically, he's a functional human being with emotional intelligence." Tessa plopped down beside her. "The bar was in hell, but okay, I'm happy for you." "The bar was in hell," Maya agreed. "But Michael cleared it by miles. They stayed up late talking the way they used to before Shane, before the penthouse, before everything got complicated." Tessa shared stories about her latest remote work disasters, and Maya talked about Michael until her sister threatened to gag her with a throw pillow. "Just promise me something," Tessa said as they finally headed to their respective rooms. Promise me you won't let fear make your decisions. Shane took enough from you. Don't let him take this too, Maya promised. The months that followed were a masterclass in what love could be when it wasn't built on conditions and performances. Michael took Maya hiking on trails where waterfalls thundered and moss covered every surface like green velvet. He cooked meals in his apartment while she read aloud from architecture magazines. He held her hand during a screening of her favorite film without checking his phone once. He never tried to change her, never suggested she wear her hair differently or dress more appropriately or smile more or talk less. He simply loved the woman she was, complicated, healing, sometimes sad, increasingly happy. One morning, Michael drove her to a clearing overlooking the city as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. They hiked to a viewpoint where Seattle spread below them, the Space Needle a tiny spike in the distance. I've been thinking, Michael said, his hand warm in hers. Dangerous activity. He smiled but didn't laugh. His nervousness was palpable. Maya, I know we haven't been together that long by traditional standards, but I'm not a traditional guy. I'm direct. I believe in saying what you mean and meaning what you say. He turned to face her fully, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. Maya's breath caught. I'm not a billionaire, Michael said. I can't give you penthouses or designer clothes or vacations in places I can't pronounce. What I can give you is this: loyalty, partnership, a life building something real together. Someone who will fight beside you, not against you. Someone who values you for exactly who you are. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring with a small stone that caught the sunrise. Marry me, Maya, not because you need someone to complete you, you're already complete, but because life is better when you share it with someone who actually sees you. Maya looked at the ring, then at Michael's face. Honest and open and terrified she might say no. She thought about Shane's proposal, delivered in an expensive restaurant with an enormous diamond and a crowd of strangers watching. She thought about how she'd felt trapped, even as she said yes. How she'd already known deep down that something was wrong. This felt nothing like that. This felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. Yes, Maya said, the word emerging strong and sure. Yes, I'll marry you. Michael's face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, which felt appropriate. Everything about Michael fit perfectly, not in the airbrushed, too good to be true way of fairy tales, but in the worn, comfortable way of things that were built to last. They married weeks later at the courthouse, with Tessa and Michael's parents as witnesses. Maya wore a simple dress and flowers in her hair. Michael wore his good suit and couldn't stop smiling. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes, and it meant everything. Afterward, they celebrated with dinner at the noodle place where their friendship had deepened into something more. No reception hall, no guest list, no mother-in-law critiquing the floral arrangements. Just two people and the family they'd chosen, eating noodles and laughing like they'd won the lottery, because in all the ways that mattered, they had. Chapter 5. The impossible miracle. The construction site smelled of sawdust and possibility when Maya's world tilted sideways. She had been reviewing foundation measurements with the site foreman, clipboard in hand, when the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. The numbers on the page blurred and doubled. Her stomach lurched with a sensation that had nothing to do with the breakfast she'd skipped. Mrs. Hussey, you okay? The foreman's voice sounded distant, underwater. Maya tried to answer, but her knees had turned to liquid. She remembered reaching for something to steady herself, remembered the clipboard clattering against concrete, and then nothing. She woke to fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell of a hospital. Michael's face appeared above her, creased with worry. "Hey," he said softly, squeezing her hand. "You scared me. What happened?" Maya's mouth tasted like cotton. "You fainted. Hit your head on the way down, but nothing serious. They're running tests now to figure out what caused it." Maya touched her forehead, finding a bandage there. Her mind raced through possibilities. Low blood sugar, dehydration, exhaustion from working too many late nights. Nothing catastrophic. nothing to explain the fear in Michael's eyes. A doctor entered, young and fresh-faced, with an expression that Maya couldn't quite read. Surprise, wonder? She carried a tablet and a manner that suggested she was about to deliver news that would change everything. "Mrs. Hussey," the doctor said, pulling up a chair beside the bed. "I'm Dr. Ellis. How are you feeling?" Confused, mostly. Dr. Ellis smiled. "That's understandable. I have some test results that might add to that confusion." She glanced at Michael, then back to Maya. "When's the last time you had a menstrual cycle?" The question seemed to come from nowhere. Maya tried to remember, her mind sluggish. "I don't know, a while. I've always been irregular. Stress makes it worse, and we've been working on a big project." She stopped, a terrible hope blooming in her chest. "Why?" "Because you're pregnant." The words hung in the air like impossible birds. Maya stared at the doctor, waiting for the punchline, the mistake, the inevitable disappointment she'd learned to expect. "That's not possible," Maya heard herself say. "I'm infertile. Multiple specialists confirmed it. I can't conceive naturally. It's medically documented." Dr. Ellis consulted her tablet. "Then multiple specialists were wrong, because you're very pregnant. Based on the ultrasound measurements, you're well into your second trimester." Second trimester. Maya's hand flew to her stomach, which she'd assumed had been getting softer from too many noodle dinners and not enough exercise. "But I had periods. Or spotting. I thought breakthrough bleeding. Not uncommon in the first trimester, especially with multiples." "Multiples?" Michael's voice cracked on the word. Dr. Ellis turned the tablet screen toward them. The image was grainy black and white, meaningless to Maya's untrained eye. But then the doctor pointed, and Maya saw them. 4 distinct shapes, 4 separate chambers, 4 tiny forms floating in darkness, like astronauts tethered to the same ship. "Quadruplets," Dr. Ellis said, her voice filled with wonder. "Extremely rare in spontaneous conception. We're talking 1 in hundreds of thousands of births. And all 4 appear to be developing normally. 4 strong heartbeats, 4 healthy measurements. It's quite remarkable." Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she was seeing. Her body, the same body Shane had called defective, the same body that had failed every test and treatment, was growing 4 lives. 4. "That's impossible," she whispered again. "Yet here we are," Dr. Ellis said gently. "Medicine isn't perfect, Mrs. Hussey. Bodies are complex. Sometimes what presents as infertility is really just the wrong timing, the wrong partner, the wrong circumstances." She paused. "Or sometimes doctors are simply wrong." Michael made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. His hand found Maya's and gripped it so tightly it hurt. 4, he breathed. "We're having 4 babies, 4 sons, based on the preliminary genetic screening," Dr. Ellis confirmed. "Congratulations!" The word seemed absurd given the circumstances. "Congratulations on the medical impossibility. Congratulations on the miracle your previous doctors said could never happen. Congratulations on proving everyone wrong in the most spectacular way imaginable." "I need to see them again," Maya said. "The ultrasound. I need to see them again," Dr. Ellis obliged, pulling up the images in higher resolution. She pointed to each tiny form, showing them the developing spine, the forming limbs, the flickering heartbeats that looked like trapped lightning. "This one is baby A," she said, tracing the outline. "And here's baby B, C, and D. They're sharing space remarkably well. Quadruplets face higher risks, which we'll discuss. But so far, everything looks healthy." Maya couldn't stop staring at the screen. 4 babies, 4 sons, 4 lives that shouldn't exist but did. 4 pieces of proof that Shane Martin's cruelest accusation, that she was fundamentally broken, was a lie. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Michael pulled her against his chest, his own tears dampening her hair. They clung to each other while Dr. Ellis tactfully busied herself with paperwork, giving them space to process the impossible made real. "I don't understand," Maya said against Michael's shirt. "How is this even possible? The doctors ran so many tests. They said my ovulation was irregular, my hormones were wrong, She couldn't finish the sentence. "They were wrong," Michael said fiercely. "Or maybe they were right then, but something changed. Or maybe, he pulled back to look at her face, maybe the problem was never you at all. The implication hung between them. Maya had never told Michael the full truth about Shane's refusal to be tested, his insistence that the fertility issues were entirely her fault. She'd been too ashamed, too convinced that Shane must have been right, because why else would the doctors have focused only on her? He wouldn't get tested, she said quietly. Shane, he refused. Said his family didn't have problems, so it had to be me. And the doctors never pushed it because he was Shane Martin, and you don't push men like that. Michael's jaw tightened. So they ruined your life based on incomplete information. They ruined my life, Maya corrected. Shane and his mother and doctors who took his word as gospel because he had money and confidence and a family name. She looked down at the ultrasound printout Dr. Ellis had handed her. But they didn't break me. They couldn't. Dr. Ellis returned with a thick folder of information. I won't lie to you both. High-order multiples come with significant risks. We'll need to see you weekly. You'll likely need to stop working in your second trimester. Bed rest is almost certain in your third. And we'll be aiming for delivery around the end of your pregnancy, though many quadruplet pregnancies deliver earlier. She walked them through a dizzying array of potential complications. Premature birth, low birth weight, twin-to-twin transfusion, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes. The list seemed endless, terrifying. But Maya had survived Shane Martin's cruelty and Diane's contempt and a city full of gossip. She could survive this, whatever we need to do, Michael said. Whatever she needs. I'm here, Dr. Ellis smiled. Good, because she's going to need you. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. They left the hospital hours later with a folder of pamphlets, a prescription for prenatal vitamins, and an ultrasound photo that Maya couldn't stop staring at. The sun was setting, painting Seattle in shades of amber and rose. Everything looked different now, sharper, more vibrant, more real. I need to call Tessa, Maya said as they reached the car. In a minute. Michael turned her to face him. Maya, look at me. She did. You're going to be an incredible mother. To 4 incredible sons. And I'm going to be right here beside you every single step. Every doctor's appointment, every complication, every moment of fear and joy and everything in between. Do you hear me? Maya nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Shane Martin was a fool, Michael said. The biggest fool in human history. Because he had you, brilliant, beautiful, strong you, and he convinced you that you were lacking when you were perfect all along. I'm not perfect, Maya whispered. No, Michael agreed. You're better. You're real. And you're mine. And now you're the mother of my 4 sons. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Our 4 sons? That night, they told Tessa, who screamed so loudly the neighbors banged on the wall. She cried and laughed and demanded to see the ultrasound photo approximately 50 times. She immediately started researching quadruplet pregnancy and making lists of everything they'd need. 4 cribs, 4 car seats, 4 of everything multiplied into an army of baby supplies. You realize you're going to need a bigger place, Tessa said, surrounded by her laptop and notebook and the growing reality of what 4 babies meant. Like, significantly bigger. We'll figure it out, Michael said, his hand resting protectively on Maya's stomach, which now made sense. The slight swell she'd attributed to weight gain was actually 4 lives taking shape. Maya touched her belly, feeling the reality of it sinking in. 4 heartbeats, 4 sons, 4 pieces of proof that she was never the problem, that her body wasn't defective, that Shane's narrative was fiction masquerading as fact. Somewhere across the country, Shane Martin was living his life without her, convinced he'd made the right choice, convinced the fertility issues had been Maya's fault, convinced he'd dodged a bullet by divorcing the woman who could never give him children. Maya smiled in the lamplight, her hand over Michael's on her belly, and thought, just wait until the truth catches up with you. Chapter 6. The Guardian at the Gates. By the time Maya reached her later months of pregnancy, She moved like a ship navigating rough waters, slowly, carefully, always aware of her precious cargo. The pregnancy tested her body in ways she hadn't imagined possible. Her back ached constantly. Her ankles swelled. She couldn't sleep lying down anymore, so Michael built a nest of pillows on the couch where she could recline semi-upright. He slept on the floor beside her, ready to wake at her smallest sound. "You don't have to do this," Maya told him one exhausting morning. "You need sleep too." "I'll sleep when they're grown," Michael said, helping her stand. "Right now, my job is keeping you and them safe." The weekly doctor appointments became the rhythm their lives moved to. Dr. Ellis monitored each baby's growth, checked fluid levels, measured Maya's blood pressure with increasing concern. The quadruplets were thriving, but Maya's body was struggling under the weight of carrying 4 lives. Eventually, Dr. Ellis delivered the verdict Maya had been dreading. "Modified bed rest," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Your blood pressure is climbing, and we need to buy as much time as possible before delivery." Maya felt her freedom evaporating. "But I have projects at work." "Maya!" Dr. Ellis leaned forward. "You're carrying 4 babies. 4. Your body is doing the work of 4 separate pregnancies simultaneously. We need to give these boys every possible advantage." So Maya became confined to the couch, with her laptop and architectural plans spread around her. Michael transformed their apartment into a fortress of care. He moved Maya's drafting table next to the couch. He meal prepped entire weeks of food. He learned to give the injections Maya needed to prevent blood clots. His parents, Patricia and James, moved into their tiny guest room to help. Patricia cooked and cleaned, while James kept Maya company, reading her favorite books aloud when her eyes grew tired. They asked for nothing in return, never complained. They simply helped. Tessa worked from the apartment now, handling phone calls while simultaneously researching baby names and organizing the growing mountain of baby supplies. "We're not going to need a nanny," Maya protested weakly. "I can handle it." Tessa fixed her with a look. "Maya, 4 babies, 4. You're going to need an army. Accept it now and save yourself the nervous breakdown later." Later in the pregnancy, Maya's blood pressure spiked dangerously high. Michael rushed her to the hospital where she spent over a week in observation. Monitors attached to her belly, tracking each baby's heartbeat. The sound filled her room constantly, 4 distinct rhythms overlapping and separating like an avant-garde symphony. Michael never left. He slept in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, his hand always within reach. He read architecture magazines aloud during the long nights. He sketched dream house editions on napkins, describing the sunroom he'd build for her someday, the workshop where the boys could learn carpentry. "You're describing a fantasy," Maya said during one particularly difficult night when contractions threatened. "I'm describing our future," Michael corrected. "Every detail, every room, every moment we're going to have with our sons. What if something goes wrong? What if, then we deal with it together?" Michael moved to sit on the edge of her bed. "Maya, listen to me. I've watched you survive things that would have destroyed most people. You're the strongest person I know. These babies are lucky to have you as their mother. What if I'm terrible at this?" "Impossible. You make houses breathe, remember? You'll teach our sons to breathe too." The contractions stopped. The crisis passed. Dr. Ellis released Maya back to home bed rest with strict instructions. Later, Maya woke to Michael reading her latest blog post about sustainable architecture. She watched him from half-closed eyes, this man who had appeared in her life when she'd stopped believing in goodness. He'd looked exhausted and beautiful and entirely present. "Michael," she said softly. He looked up, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "I need you to know that I love you, that I loved you before this pregnancy, that you're not trapped by obligation or duty. Stop." Michael set down his tablet and took her hands. "Maya, I'm not here out of obligation. I'm here because there's nowhere else I want to be. These babies are ours. Biology doesn't matter. Love matters. Choice matters. And I choose you. I choose us. Every single day I choose this." He kissed her, gentle and reverent, like she was something precious that might break. Maybe they both were. Maybe love always was. fragile and fierce and worth protecting. Eventually, Dr. Ellis decided it was time. "We've pushed as far as we safely can," she said during a house call. "Your blood pressure is in the danger zone. The babies are measuring well and have excellent lung development. Any longer, and we risk serious complications for you." They scheduled the delivery, a planned cesarean section with 4 surgical teams standing by. Maya had 1 week to prepare for the moment that had seemed impossible. She spent that week in a strange liminal space between fear and anticipation. Michael built 4 cribs. Patricia washed tiny clothes. James assembled car seats with intense focus. Tessa created color-coded schedules and emergency contact lists. The night before the delivery, Michael lay on the floor beside the couch as always, his hand on Maya's belly. The babies moved beneath his palm, a strange rolling sensation that never stopped. "What do you think they'll look like?" Maya asked the darkness. "Beautiful. Obviously. I'm serious." Michael was quiet for a moment. "I think Peter will have your eyes. Reed will have your smile. Johnny will have your determination. And Ben will have your heart." He squeezed her hand. "And all of them will know they're loved. All of them will grow up in a house where their worth isn't measured by what they can produce, but simply by the fact that they exist. That's what we're giving them, Maya. That's the foundation." Maya felt tears slide down her temples. "I wish my mother could see this. She died believing I'd never have children, that Shane was right about me. Then tomorrow we prove them both wrong," Michael said fiercely. "Tomorrow 4 boys come into this world because you refuse to stay broken. Remember that when you're scared. Remember that you've already won." The next morning arrived with unseasonable sunshine. They drove to the hospital in silence, Maya's hand in Michael's, both of them trembling with terror and anticipation. The delivery was chaos and miracle intertwined. 4 surgical teams, monitors screaming, lights blazing. Michael stood by her head, masked and gowned, his eyes saying everything words couldn't. Then cutting through the medical noise, a cry. "High and indignant and alive, baby A," Dr. Ellis announced.
"First son!"
Good strong lungs. Another cry joined the first, then a third, then a fourth. 4 distinct voices announcing their arrival. 4 lives that shouldn't exist but did. 4 pieces of proof that Maya Lara was never the problem. They brought the babies to her one by one, swaddled and crying and impossibly small. Peter, the serious one, already studying the world with solemn eyes. Reed, who stopped crying the moment he heard Maya's voice. Johnny, who came out wailing. Ben, the smallest, who gripped Michael's finger with surprising strength. "Hello," Maya whispered to each of them, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, I'm your mother." "I'm your mother, and I've been waiting for you forever." The neonatologist pronounced them remarkably healthy for quadruplets. Strong lungs and vital signs that made the medical team exchange pleased glances. They'd need a few days in the NICU for observation, but all 4 boys would go home healthy. Michael stood surrounded by bassinets, looking at his sons with absolute wonder. When he met Maya's eyes across the recovery room, they both started laughing. That slightly hysterical laughter of people who've survived something impossible and come out the other side transformed. That night, Maya lay in her hospital bed, staring at the photos on her phone. 4 identical faces, 4 sons, 4 miracles that existed because she'd refused to accept Shane Martin's narrative about her worth. She thought about sending Shane a message. Just a photo, maybe, letting him know what his cruelty had cost him. But in the end, she did nothing, because Shane Martin wasn't part of this story anymore. This story was about Maya and Michael, and 4 boys who would grow up knowing their mother was never broken, just waiting for the right time and the right partner and the right moment for impossible things to become real. Chapter 7. The Empire of 5. The quadruplets grew like wildflowers, chaotic, beautiful, and absolutely unstoppable. Peter emerged as the thinker, always studying things with intense concentration before taking action. He learned to crawl last, but walked first, having apparently analyzed the mechanics thoroughly. He sorted his toys by color and size before playing with them, creating elaborate systems only he understood. Reed was the charmer who smiled at strangers and made them fall instantly in love. He learned to talk early and never stopped, his constant narration filling the house with observations about everything. He could convince his brothers to hand over their toys with nothing but a grin and a please. Johnny was the wild one, climbing before he could properly walk, launching himself off furniture with the confidence of someone who'd never learned to fear gravity. He collected scraped knees and bruises like badges of honor. Michael had to install baby gates on everything. Ben was the peacemaker, the emotional center that held his chaotic brothers in orbit. When Peter got frustrated, Ben would sit beside him offering quiet support. When Reed's charm failed, Ben would share his snacks. When Johnny got hurt, Ben cried harder than the injured party. Michael treated them as his own, without caveat or distinction, never once mentioning biology. He was simply Dad, the man who built them a treehouse, who coached their soccer team, who attended every school play and sat in the front row cheering. Maya thrived in motherhood, the way she'd once thrived in architecture, with fierce dedication and natural instinct. She designed their house layout around child psychology, creating quiet corners for Peter, open spaces for Johnny, conversation nooks for Reed, and cozy spots for Ben. Every room breathed with intentional love. The years blurred together in a beautiful chaos of birthday parties and soccer games and homework struggles and whispered bedtime stories. Tessa became Aunt Tessa, Patricia and James became Grandma and Grandpa, and the small apartment they'd started in became a house with a yard where the boys could run wild. Maya sometimes forgot about her old life entirely. Whole weeks would pass without thinking about Shane or the penthouse or the woman she'd been who believed she was defective. That life felt like a story that had happened to someone else. But across the country, Shane Martin's life had calcified into something hollow. His second marriage lasted barely any time at all. Felicia had been everything Maya wasn't. Society-bred, fashion-obsessed, perfectly comfortable at galas where nothing real was ever said. But when treatments failed, she'd left him with the same accusation he'd once leveled at Maya. "You're not worth the struggle." His life grew increasingly desperate. The Martin name still carried weight, but weight alone couldn't sustain an empire built more on reputation than actual value. His mother, Diane, aged rapidly after a stroke left her diminished and dependent. She asked repeatedly about grandchildren that would never come, unable to remember that Shane had divorced the one woman who might have given them to her. She lived in a care facility now, her sharp tongue dulled by medication and confusion. Shane drank expensive whiskey alone in the penthouse, scrolling through old photos of Maya from their marriage. In the pictures, she smiled at galas and charity events. But he could see it now, the strain around her eyes, the forced quality of her happiness, the woman dying slowly beneath the performance. He'd convinced himself for years that he'd made the right choice. But lately, alone in the echoing silence, he wondered. Wondered if the doctors had been wrong. Wondered if he'd been wrong. Wondered if he'd destroyed something precious because he'd been too proud to consider. That maybe the problem had been him all along. His third engagement ended when his fiancée demanded they both get full medical screenings before marriage. She'd been burned before by a man who'd hidden his health issues. She wanted transparency. Shane agreed, confident the tests would vindicate him. The results sat on his desk for days before he opened them. When he did, the carefully constructed narrative of his life collapsed like a building with no foundation. The urologist's report was clinical and devastating. Severe oligospermia, abnormally low sperm count, likely congenital. Sperm motility so poor that natural conception was statistically impossible without aggressive medical intervention. The date ranges. The doctor reference included the years of Shane's marriage to Maya. Shane read the report 3 times, his hands trembling. Every conversation with Maya about fertility, every accusation he'd hurled at her. Every time he told her she was defective, broken, not enough, he'd been describing himself. The problem had always been him. The fertility issues were his. He'd destroyed their marriage, humiliated her publicly, convinced her she was fundamentally flawed, all while being the actual source of the problem. Shane stood and paced the penthouse, the report clutched in his shaking hand. He thought about calling Maya, apologizing, explaining. But what would he say? His phone rang. His fiancée, calling to discuss the screening results. Shane stared at her name on the screen until the call went to voicemail. Then he blocked her number, because what was the point? Another woman, another relationship, another eventual failure. The problem wasn't them, it was him. It had always been him. Over the following weeks, Shane spiraled into desperate damage control. He couldn't admit the truth, not to his social circle, not even to his mother in her diminished state. So he did what cowards do. He doubled down. He revised the narrative. At gatherings, he began telling a new story. Maya had been manipulative, faking fertility issues for sympathy and money. She probably bought children somewhere after the divorce. The whole thing had been a con from the start. His friends, men as morally bankrupt as Shane himself, nodded along. They'd believed his first story, so why not believe this revision? Truth was flexible when you had enough money and confidence to shape it, but the medical report existed. Filed in his doctor's office, a paper trail of truth that contradicted every lie. A bomb waiting to detonate. Shane locked the report in his safe, as if containing the physical evidence could contain the reality it represented. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. The answer, he knew, was that he'd always been this. Diane had raised him to believe that Martin men were infallible, that admitting weakness was worse than causing harm. That image mattered more than truth, and Maya had paid the price for his mother's poison and his own cowardice. In Seattle, Maya tucked her sons into bed, reading them stories about brave knights and clever princesses and dragons that turned out to be misunderstood. Michael kissed each boy's forehead, telling them he loved them in the steady voice of a man who meant every word. Peter asked questions about the story's internal logic. Reed provided commentary on everyone's character choices. Johnny tried to wrestle his way out of bed, despite being exhausted. Ben hugged his stuffed elephant and listened with quiet attention. "Mom," Ben said as Maya moved to turn off the light. "Why do the princesses in stories always need rescuing?" Maya smiled. "The good stories don't have princesses who need rescuing. The good stories have princesses who rescue themselves. Like you," Ben said simply. Maya's throat tightened. "Like me," she agreed. Downstairs, Michael poured her tea and they sat on the couch in comfortable silence. The boys' night lights cast soft glows from upstairs. The house settled with the sounds of home, creaking wood and humming appliances and distant traffic. "Do you ever think about him?" Michael asked quietly. "Your ex?" Maya considered the question. "Sometimes. But not the way I used to. I don't think about the life we had or what we lost. I think about how grateful I am that it ended, because otherwise I wouldn't have this." She gestured to the house, the boys sleeping upstairs, Michael beside her. This life that was messy and loud and real and infinitely more valuable than anything Shane's money could have bought. "He has no idea what he lost," Michael said. "No," Maya agreed. "He doesn't." But somewhere in the back of her mind, Maya wondered if someday Shane would understand. If the truth would catch up with him. If the careful lies he'd built would eventually collapse under their own weight. She didn't hope for it out of vengeance. She didn't need him to suffer for her to be happy, but truth had a way of emerging, patient and inevitable as sunrise. And when it did, Shane Martin would finally understand exactly what his pride and his mother's poison had cost him. Chapter 8. The Serpent's Tongue. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening, while Shane was several whiskeys deep and reviewing reports that made his stomach hurt. "Mr. Martin, this is Elena Reyes. I used to be your executive assistant." Shane straightened in his chair, mind racing. Elena had quit years ago, citing vague personal reasons. He'd thought good riddance. She'd been too observant, too willing to ask uncomfortable questions, disguised as administrative necessities. Elena, it's been a while. It has. Her voice was carefully neutral. I'm calling because I've recently connected with your ex-wife, Maya. We have a mutual acquaintance in Seattle. Shane's hand tightened on his glass. I'm not sure what Maya has to do with anything. Neither am I, which is why I'm confused by the stories I've been hearing. Stories about her faking fertility issues. Stories that contradict what I witnessed during your marriage. Ice slid down Shane's spine. I don't know what you think you witnessed. I witnessed you refusing to get tested, Elena interrupted. I witnessed doctor's appointments scheduled and then cancelled at your insistence. I witnessed Maya crying in the penthouse bathroom after particularly cruel remarks from your mother. She paused. And I witnessed certain medical documents that crossed my desk when I was organizing your files before I left. The safe in Shane's office seemed to throb with accusation. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? Because I made copies, Mr. Martin. Insurance, in case you ever tried to rewrite history. Which apparently you have. Shane's mouth went dry. Those documents are confidential. If you shared them with anyone, I haven't, yet. But I'm done watching you destroy a good woman's reputation to protect your own ego. Eleanor's voice hardened. I know the truth, Mr. Martin. I know Maya wasn't the one with fertility issues. I know you've been lying for years. And if you don't stop spreading these vicious rumors about her, I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. She hung up before Shane could respond. He sat in the darkness of his office, the phone dead in his hand, his carefully constructed lies suddenly feeling like walls closing in. Elena had documentation. She had proof. She had the power to destroy everything he'd built on the foundation of Maya's supposed inadequacy. He poured another whiskey with shaking hands. The logical thing would be to stop spreading the revised story about Maya, to let it die quietly before. Elena made good on her threat, but Shane Martin had never been logical when his image was at stake. Instead, he escalated. At the next charity gala, he told anyone who would listen about his manipulative ex-wife, who'd probably purchased children on the black market to perpetuate her victim narrative. At social gatherings, he implied Maya had been mentally unstable, prone to dramatic accusations and lies. He painted himself as the victim of a calculating woman who'd trapped him in marriage and then played the infertility card for sympathy. His friends believed him, because wealthy men always believed each other when the alternative was examining their own complicity in systems of cruelty. They nodded and commiserated, and agreed that Shane had been lucky to escape such a devious woman. But not everyone believed. Cracks were forming in Shane's social circle. People who remembered Maya as kind and genuine, who'd watched Shane's mother poison that marriage from the inside, who found his new narrative a bit too convenient and contradictory. One of those people was someone who'd always liked Maya and never quite trusted Diane's influence on Shane. Just between us, the man said one evening over drinks. This new story about Maya doesn't add up. I remember her. She wasn't manipulative. She was actually decent, which is why your mother hated her. Shane tried to laugh it off. People show different faces to different people. You didn't see what I saw. Maybe, he said, his eyes shrewd. Or maybe I didn't see what you wanted me to see. The comment haunted Shane for days. Were people starting to question him? Was his reputation, the only thing he'd ever really valued, beginning to crack? He made a crucial mistake then. In a panic about controlling the narrative, Shane began telling his revised story to even more people, more aggressively, with more embellishment. Maya wasn't just manipulative anymore. She was dangerous. She'd stolen from him. She'd threatened him. The lies spiraled out of control, each version more dramatic than the last. And somewhere in Seattle, Elena received a phone call from a concerned mutual friend who'd heard Shane's latest accusations. He's completely lost the plot, the friend said. He's claiming Maya was abusive now, that she stole money from him during the divorce, that she was having affairs throughout the marriage. It's insane. Elena made a decision that night. She'd given Shane a chance to stop. He'd chosen escalation instead. Now, it was time for the truth to come out, whether he was ready or not. She called Tessa, who she'd been in touch with since reconnecting with Maya. "I need to talk to Maya, in person. I have information she needs to see." They met at a coffee shop in Seattle, Elena traveling across the country specifically for this conversation. She brought copies of everything. Doctor's correspondence, the medical report Shane had tried to hide, emails between Shane and his mother discussing how to manage the Maya problem during their marriage. Maya read through the documents with shaking hands, Michael beside her reading over her shoulder. The evidence was damning, proof that Shane had known or should have known that the fertility issues were his. Proof that he'd refused testing specifically because he suspected the problem was his, but couldn't admit it. Proof that Diane had coached him on shifting blame to Maya to avoid family embarrassment. "He's been telling people I faked everything," Maya said quietly, setting down the papers. "That I probably bought children somewhere. That I'm mentally unstable." "I know," Elena said. "And I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner. I was scared of him, of his family's influence. But watching him destroy your reputation while you've been living your life in peace, I couldn't stay silent anymore." Michael's jaw was tight with controlled anger. "What do you want us to do with this information?" "Whatever you want," Elena said. "I'm willing to testify to what I witnessed. I'm willing to share these documents publicly. Or you can simply keep them as insurance in case he escalates further." She looked at Maya directly. "But you should know, Diane is being honored at the annual Martin Family Charity Gala soon. It's her last public appearance before her health deteriorates further. Everyone who matters in Shane's world will be there." Maya stared at the medical report, the document that proved Shane had been lying for years, the document that vindicated her completely. The document that would destroy Shane's reputation the way he'd tried to destroy hers. "I want to go," Maya heard herself say. "To the gala. I want Shane to see what he threw away. I want him to see the truth." Michael's hand found hers. "Are you sure? We don't need to prove anything to him. We know the truth." "That's enough." "It's not enough," Maya said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "Because he's out there right now telling lies about me. Lies that could follow me, follow our boys. I need him to stop. And the only way he'll stop is if he understands that the truth exists and I'm willing to use it." Tessa leaned forward. "So we go to the gala, all of us. You, Michael, and the boys. We show him exactly what his lies cost him." Elena nodded slowly. "I can get you an invitation. The Martins still send them to former employees, out of obligation. No one actually checks who shows up at these things. Too many guests. Too much chaos." Maya looked at the medical report again, then at Michael, then at Elena. She thought about Peter, Reed, Johnny and Ben at home with Patricia and James, growing up healthy and loved, and completely ignorant of the man who'd once convinced their mother she was worthless. "Okay," Maya said. "We go, we show him. And we end this." Over the next while, Maya prepared. Not with expensive dresses or jewelry, but with something more powerful, certainty. The certainty that she'd done nothing wrong, that her body wasn't defective, that Shane's narrative had always been a lie designed to protect his fragile ego. She bought a simple emerald dress that made her feel strong. She had her hair done in elegant braids that honored her natural texture instead of fighting it. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw not the broken woman who'd left the penthouse years ago, but a mother of 4 who'd survived and thrived despite everything. The night before the gala, Michael found her on their back porch, watching the boys play in the yard. Peter was explaining the rules of some elaborate game to his brothers. Reed was negotiating modifications. Johnny was ignoring the rules entirely. Ben was trying to keep everyone from arguing. "You don't have to do this," Michael said quietly. "We can stay home. We can ignore him forever." "I know," Maya said, "but I want to do this. Not for revenge, not to hurt him, but to close the door completely, to look him in the eye and show him that his lies have no power over me anymore." Michael pulled her close. "Then we'll do it together, all of us. You, me, and 4 boys who are living proof that you were never the problem. Maya leaned into him, watching her sons play, and felt ready. Ready to face Shane, ready to show him the truth. Ready to finally completely move on. The medical report sat in her purse, waiting. Tomorrow, Shane Martin would learn what it cost to build a life on lies. Chapter 9, The Gathering Storm. The invitation to the Martin family gala arrived by courier. Elena's name elegantly printed in gold script alongside, and guests. Maya held it like it might burn her fingers. The heavy cardstock, the embossed lettering, the subtle scent of money and expectation that clung to everything the Martin family touched. Once these invitations had filled her with dread, knowing each gala was an opportunity for Diane to catalogue her failings in front of witnesses. Now, it felt like a key to a door she'd been locked behind for too long. "You're sure about this?" Tessa asked for what felt like the 100th time. She sat at the kitchen table, laptop open to the gala details Elena had provided. Guest list, venue layout, schedule of events. "I'm sure," Maya said. And she was. The nervousness in her stomach wasn't fear, it was anticipation. The feeling before stepping onto a stage or presenting a finished architectural design. The moment before truth replaced speculation. Michael came downstairs with the boys, dressed in matching suits. All 4 of them looked uncomfortable in the formal clothing, tugging at their collars and fidgeting with their cuffs. Peter had already identified 17 design flaws in suit construction. Reed was practicing his meeting important people smile in the hallway mirror. Johnny had asked 3 times if they were allowed to jump on the fancy hotel furniture. Ben clutched his mother's hand like a lifeline. "We look ridiculous," Reed announced. "Like tiny businessmen. You look handsome," Maya corrected, straightening his collar. "Like the incredible young men you are. Why do we have to go to this thing anyway?" Johnny asked, attempting a cartwheel in his suit pants. "Because your mother has something important to do," Michael said, gently stopping Johnny mid-flip. "And we're her backup, like superheroes?" Ben asked. "Exactly like superheroes," Tessa said, swooping in to fix Peter's crooked tie. "Your mom is going to face a bad guy from her past, and you're going to show him exactly what he lost by being cruel to her." "Was he mean to you, Mom?" Peter asked with that serious, analyzing look he got when processing difficult information. Maya knelt to his level. "He was, a long time ago. But I survived it, and now I have you 4, and I'm happier than I ever was with him. Sometimes bad things happen so better things can find us, and now you're going to make him sorry." Reed asked, his eyes bright with justice. "No," Maya said carefully. "Now I'm going to show him the truth, which is more powerful than making anyone sorry." They loaded into the car, the boys chattering in the back seat while Michael drove. Maya watched the city pass outside her window, her hand resting on her purse where the medical report waited in its sealed envelope. Elena had highlighted the key sections, the dates that proved Shane's condition existed during their marriage, the doctor's conclusion that natural conception was impossible without intervention. The report was a bomb disguised as paperwork. And tonight, Maya would decide whether to detonate it. The Grand Cascade Hotel rose before them like a monument to excess. Valet attendants in pristine uniforms rushed to open doors. The lobby dripped with crystal chandeliers and marble floors, polished to mirror brightness. Maya had attended events here during her marriage, always feeling like an imposter in Diane's world of old money and older prejudices. Tonight, she walked through those doors with her head high and her sons around her, and she felt like she owned the place. The ballroom was already filling with the city's elite, men in expensive suits, women in designer gowns, everyone performing the elaborate dance of wealth and status. Maya recognized many faces from her marriage. Some registered recognition when they saw her, eyes widening with surprise. Others looked right through her, unable to place the woman in the emerald dress who'd once been Shane Martin's wife. "That's a lot of people," Ben whispered, pressing closer to Maya's leg. "It is," she agreed, "but they're just people. Some of them are kind. Some of them are cruel. Most of them are somewhere in between, trying to figure out which version of themselves to be." Shane stood near the bar, holding court with a group of men Maya recognized as his father's former associates. He'd aged in the years since their divorce. Harder lines around his mouth, grey threading through his hair, something weary in his posture despite his expensive suit. He looked successful in the way that meant nothing. Polished exterior, hollow interior. He hadn't seen her yet. "Do you want to leave?" Michael asked quietly, reading her tension. "We can turn around right now." "No one would blame you." "No," Maya said. "I need to do this." Eleanor appeared from the crowd, stunning in a navy gown. "You made it. I wasn't sure you'd actually come through." "Neither was I until about an hour ago," Maya admitted. Elena nodded toward Shane. "He's been drinking steadily since he arrived. His mother's already been wheeled in for her honor ceremony. She's in rough shape, barely coherent. I heard him on the phone earlier. Something about another deal falling through. He's not having a good night." "Good," Tessa said. "Makes our job easier." Maya scanned the room, noting exits and potential escape routes, the architect in her automatically mapping space and flow. "Where's the presentation happening?" "Main stage soon. They're honoring Diane for her philanthropic legacy." Elena made air quotes around philanthropic, "before her health deteriorates further. Everyone will be watching. Maximum visibility." "Perfect," Maya said, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The boys had found the dessert table and were debating whether the chocolate fountain was operational. Michael supervised from a few feet away, his body language protective despite his casual stance. He caught Maya's eye and smiled, and she felt some of her nervousness ease. "Mom," Johnny called. "Can we actually eat this stuff, or is it just for looking at?" "You can eat it," Maya called back, "but use napkins." A familiar laugh cut through the ambient noise. Maya turned to see Diane being wheeled into the ballroom, her son walking beside her chair, his hand on her shoulder. Diane looked diminished in ways that went beyond physical frailty, smaller, confused. The sharp intelligence that had made her so dangerous now, clouded by illness and medication. Shane bent to whisper something in his mother's ear, and she smiled vaguely, not quite tracking the conversation around her. For a moment, Maya felt unexpected pity. Diane had spent her life building an empire of influence and judgment, and now she couldn't remember most of it. But then Diane's eyes found Maya across the crowded ballroom. Recognition flickered, brief but unmistakable. Her mouth shaped words Maya couldn't hear from this distance. But Shane followed his mother's gaze. Time seemed to slow as Shane's eyes locked onto Maya. She watched realization dawn on his face. Shock, confusion, something that might have been fear. His gaze moved from Maya to Michael, to the four boys in matching suits who were currently decorating themselves with chocolate fountain drips. Shane's face went pale. His grip on his mother's wheelchair tightened. He said something to an assistant who rushed to take over, pushing Diane. And then Shane was moving through the crowd toward Maya with the inevitability of a train on tracks. "He's coming over," Elena said unnecessarily. "Let him," Maya said, and was surprised by how calm she sounded. Shane stopped a few feet away. Maintaining distance like Maya might be contagious. Up close, he looked worse than he had from across the room. Eyes bloodshot, skin sallow, the smell of expensive whiskey barely masked by cologne. "Maya," he said, her name rusty in his mouth. "What are you doing here?" "Attending a gala," she said simply. "With my family." Shane's eyes moved to Michael, assessing and dismissing him in the way rich men dismissed anyone they considered beneath them. But then his gaze snagged on the boys, and something complicated passed across his face. He started, then stopped. "My sons," Maya finished. "Peter, Reed, Johnny, and Ben, healthy, happy, and completely proof that I was never the problem you convinced everyone I was." "That's impossible," Shane said, but his voice carried no conviction. "You couldn't conceive." The doctor said I had fertility issues," Maya interrupted, "based on incomplete information, because someone refused to get tested himself, preferring to blame his wife instead of confronting his own inadequacy." Shane's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Maya said. "I'm stating facts. Facts I have documentation for." She pulled the envelope from her purse, holding it between them like a sword. Shane's eyes fixed on it with the horrified recognition of someone seeing their own execution warrant. "That's private medical information," he said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You have no right—" "Elena had every right," Maya corrected. "She witnessed you refuse testing during our marriage. She saw documents that proved you've known for years that you're the one with severe fertility issues, not me. And she watched you spread vicious lies about me to protect your fragile ego. The people nearby had stopped pretending not to listen. The conversation was drawing attention, heads turning, voices quieting. Maya," Shane said, desperation creeping into his tone. "Let's discuss this privately. There's no need to make a scene." "You made the scene," Maya said, her voice carrying now. "You made it when you divorced me publicly and blamed me for something that was your failure. You made it when you told everyone I was defective. You made it when you spread lies about me buying children or faking mental illness." She took a step closer. "I'm just finishing what you started. With truth instead of lies." Shane's face flushed with anger and humiliation. "You're bitter and vindictive. Coming here with those children, trying to embarrass me. Those children are the proof you're a liar," Michael said, his voice quiet but carrying an edge that made Shane step back. "And if you want to avoid further embarrassment, I suggest you stop talking." The ballroom had gone almost silent now. The Martin family drama unfolding with better entertainment value than any planned program. Diane's voice cut through the tension, reedy but determined. "Shane, what's happening? Who is that woman?" Shane closed his eyes briefly, the weight of everything collapsing on him at once. Maya felt the envelope in her hand, felt the power it represented. She could end Shane right now, could hand the medical report to the nearest society columnist and watch his reputation crumble in real time. But looking at him, diminished, desperate, clinging to lies because the truth would destroy the only thing he'd ever valued, Maya made a different choice. "This is your last chance," she said quietly. "Stop spreading lies about me. Stop trying to rewrite history. Accept what you did and move on with whatever life you have left." She held up the envelope. "Or this truth becomes everyone's truth. Your choice?" Shane stared at her, something broken in his eyes. "Maya, But whatever he was going to say was lost as his mother called his name again. Confused and frightened by the tension she could sense, but not understand. "We should go," Michael said softly to Maya. She nodded, taking one last look at Shane Martin, the man who'd tried to destroy her and failed. The man whose lies were finally catching up with him. "Boys," she called. "Time to go." Her sons came running, chocolate-stained and happy, completely unbothered by the drama their presence had caused. They clustered around Maya and Michael, a unit of love and belonging that needed no validation from anyone. As they walked toward the exit, Maya heard the whispers starting behind them, heard Shane's voice trying to explain, to justify, to spin one more lie from the ruins of his credibility. But Maya didn't look back. She'd said what she needed to say, done what she came to do. The rest was up to Shane and the truth he'd spent years running from. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. Maya paused at the ballroom exit, her hand on the ornate door handle, when Shane's voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "Wait." She didn't turn immediately. Beside her, Michael's hand found hers, a silent question. She squeezed back, "I'm okay," and only then did she face Shane Martin one final time. He stood in the center of the ballroom now, surrounded by the city's elite, with his mother being wheeled closer by the nervous assistant. The man who'd once commanded every room with confidence now looked like he was standing on crumbling ground. "You can't just walk in here and make accusations," Shane said, but his voice lacked the authority it once carried. "You can't stand in front of these people and spread lies." "Lies." Maya's voice rang clear in the sudden silence. "Like the lies you've been spreading about me for years. About how I faked fertility issues. About how I probably bought children somewhere. About how I was manipulative and unstable." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Shane's face went from pale to red. That's not, I never said, he stammered. You did, Elena said, stepping forward from the crowd. I've heard you say it, multiple times. To multiple people. I have witnesses. Other voices joined in, people confirming the stories Shane had spread, the narrative he'd built to protect himself. His lies were being pulled into the light by people he'd trusted to keep his secrets. Shane's mother, Diane, gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Shane, what are they talking about? What did you do? Mother, it's fine, they're confused. Show them, Tessa said from beside Maya. Show them the truth. Maya pulled the medical report from the envelope. The pages felt heavy with consequence as she held them up for the ballroom to see. This is Shane Martin's urologist report, she said, her voice steady. Filed years ago before our divorce. It documents severe fertility issues. His fertility issues, not mine. It proves that natural conception was medically impossible for him without intervention. It proves that when he blamed me publicly for our inability to have children, he was lying. The room erupted in whispers. Shane lurched forward, reaching for the papers, but Michael stepped between them. Don't, Michael said quietly. You've touched her enough. Shane's hand fell. He looked around the ballroom, at faces that had always supported him, always believed him, now looking at him with dawning skepticism and disgust. This doesn't prove anything, Shane said desperately. Medical conditions can change. This could be from after the divorce. The date is right there, Elena said, pointing. Years before you divorced Maya. You've known about this condition for years. You refused to share it with her or the fertility specialists you both saw. You let her believe she was the problem when you knew the truth all along. Diane made a sound like something breaking. Shane, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this. Shane looked at his mother, at the woman who'd raised him to believe Martin men were infallible, that admitting weakness was worse than causing harm. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I did what I had to do, he finally said. Our family name, our reputation, you destroyed an innocent woman's life to protect our reputation. Diane's voice was surprisingly strong, despite her frail appearance. You convinced her she was worthless. You divorced her and humiliated her publicly. You told me to, Shane shot back, desperation making him cruel. You said she wasn't good enough for the family. You said we needed an heir, and if she couldn't provide one, I never told you to lie, Diane said, her voice breaking. I never told you to destroy someone rather than admit your own failings. She looked at Maya, recognition and something like regret flickering in her clouded eyes. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about so many things. Shane stood frozen, his mother's words a betrayal he hadn't seen coming. Everything was unraveling. His reputation, his relationships, the carefully constructed narrative that had allowed him to sleep at night. Maya, he said, turning to her with something raw in his voice. Please, don't do this. Don't ruin me. We can talk about this privately. I'll admit I made mistakes. I'll apologize. Just don't what? Maya stepped forward, and she saw Shane flinch. Don't tell the truth? Don't let people know who you really are. Why would I protect you when you spent years destroying me? Because you're better than me, Shane whispered. You always were. That's why this hurts so much. Because I know you're going to walk away from here and be fine, and I'm going to be left with the ruins of everything I built on lies. The honesty of it landed like a physical blow. Maya looked at this man who'd once held power over her, who'd convinced her she was fundamentally broken, and felt nothing but exhaustion. You're right, she said quietly. I am better than you. But not because I'm perfect. Because I survived what you did to me and chose to build something real instead of something impressive. Because I found a partner who treats me like a person instead of a possession. Because I have 4 sons who will grow up knowing their worth isn't measured by their failures or their mother's ability to conceive them. She gestured to Peter. Read Johnny and Ben, who stood in a protective cluster near Michael. These boys exist because I refused to believe your narrative. Because I moved on and found someone who loved me without conditions. They're living proof that you were wrong about me. That you wasted years of my life on a lie you were too cowardly to confront. Shane's eyes moved to the boys, really looked at them for the first time. 4 healthy, beautiful children who should have been impossible according to the story he'd told himself. 4 pieces of evidence that destroyed every justification he'd built. "I'm sorry," he said, the words inadequate and far too late. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I was scared and stupid, and I let my mother's poison convince me that admitting weakness was worse than hurting you. I should have been tested. I should have faced the truth. I should have been honest with you, instead of making you believe you were the problem." "Yes," Maya said simply. "You should have." She walked toward him then, close enough to hand him the medical report. Shane took it with shaking hands, staring at the document that represented everything he'd tried to hide. "This is yours," Maya said. "Your truth. Your responsibility. What you do with it now is up to you, but the lies stop here. You don't speak about me again. You don't try to contact me or my family. You accept what you did and you live with it." Shane nodded, unable to speak. Maya turned to Diane. "You raised a son who thought his image was more important than other people's humanity. You taught him that admitting failure was unacceptable. You created this." She gestured to Shane, to the ballroom full of witnesses, to his disgrace. "I hope you're proud." Diane's face crumpled. "I'm not. I'm not proud at all." Maya felt Michael's hand on her shoulder, grounding her. The boys had migrated closer. Peter gripping her dress, Reed leaning against Michael, Johnny and Ben watching everything with wide, serious eyes. "We're leaving now," Maya said to the room at large. "This man doesn't get any more of my time or energy. He's not worth it." She walked toward the exit, her family around her, and the crowd parted like she was royalty. Because in this moment, walking away from the man who'd tried to destroy her, walking toward a life she'd built from rubble, she was. Behind them, Shane's voice called out one last time. "I loved you. I know I failed you, but I did love you, Maya." She paused at the door, looking back at him one final time. "No, you didn't. You loved what I represented. You loved having a wife who made you look good. But you never loved me, Shane, because if you had, you would have protected me instead of sacrificing me to protect yourself." The door closed behind them with finality. Outside, the night air was cool and clean, washing away the stale atmosphere of the ballroom. Maya breathed deeply, feeling lighter than she had in years. The boys immediately started complaining about their uncomfortable suits, and Michael laughed as Johnny attempted to climb him like a tree to escape his dress shoes. "Mom," Ben said, tugging on her dress. "Are you okay?" Maya knelt and pulled all 4 boys into a hug, feeling their warmth and solidity and absolute realness. "I'm perfect, baby. I'm absolutely perfect." They drove home through the city lights, the boys eventually falling asleep in the back seat, chocolate-stained and exhausted. Michael drove with one hand, the other holding Maya's across the console. "You were amazing in there," he said quietly. "I was terrified," Maya admitted. "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway." They pulled into their driveway, carrying sleeping boys up to their beds. Maya tucked each one in, kissing foreheads and pulling blankets tight. Peter mumbled something about suit engineering in his sleep. Reed smiled, even unconscious. Johnny's hand found his stuffed dinosaur. Ben curled into a ball, completely peaceful. Downstairs, Maya made tea while Michael built a fire in the fireplace they used constantly, unlike the decorative one in Shane's penthouse. They sat on their worn couch, surrounded by toys and architectural magazines and the beautiful chaos of actual life. "Do you think he'll change?" Michael asked. Maya considered the question. "I don't know, maybe, probably not. But it doesn't matter anymore. He's not my story." She looked around their living room, the crayon marks on the wall the boys had made last week, the family photos covering every surface, the handprints in clay from Mother's Day, the treehouse visible through the window despite the darkness. This was her story, this messy, loud, imperfect, absolutely beautiful life. Across the city, Shane Martin sat alone in his penthouse. Through the walls, he could hear music and laughter from the building across the courtyard. He moved to the window and saw a celebration. Maya's family had rented a space for the Quadruplets' birthday party that had been postponed for the gala. He watched Peter, read Johnny and Ben racing around with cake and presents, watched Maya and Michael dancing slowly while the boys laughed and shouted, watched Tessa and Patricia decorating and James pretending to be a dinosaur to the boys' delight. Watched the family he could have had if he'd been brave enough to face the truth years ago. The laughter floated across the night air, a sound that would haunt every silence for the rest of his life. Shane slid down the window glass to the floor, tears cutting tracks down his face, completely alone with the empire he'd built on lies. In the morning, Shane Martin would wake to find his scandal trending on social media, his mother's lawyers calling about changing her will, and his associates quietly distancing themselves. His carefully constructed life would continue its collapse, one relationship at a time, one reputation at a time, until nothing remained but the truth he'd spent years running from. But tonight, across the courtyard, Maya Lara tucked 4 sleeping boys into bed after the best party of their lives. She kissed each forehead. Peter's serious brow, Reed's smiling cheeks, Johnny's scraped chin, Ben's peaceful face. She stood in the doorway watching them sleep. These 4 impossible miracles who existed because she'd refused to accept Shane's version of her story. Michael appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. Together they watched their sons breathe in the darkness. 4 lives that shouldn't exist according to Shane's narrative. 4 pieces of proof that love and truth were more powerful than money and lies. "Thank you," Maya whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For loving me when I thought I was unlovable. For giving me this." She gestured to the sleeping boys, to the house that breathed with their presence, to the life they'd built together. "You gave me this too," Michael said. "You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to believe in second chances." They stood there until the boys' breathing synchronized into a peaceful rhythm, until the party's sounds from across the courtyard faded, until the city settled into its nighttime hum. Then they went downstairs together, leaving the door cracked so they could hear if anyone needed them. In the living room, Maya picked up the medical report she'd brought home from the gala. Shane's truth laid bare in clinical language and irrefutable dates. She held it for a moment, feeling its weight, feeling the power it represented. Then she walked to the fireplace and tossed it into the flames. Michael raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" "It's the only proof you have." "I don't need proof anymore," Maya said, watching the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. "I have 4 sons sleeping upstairs. I have a husband who loves me. I have a life that's real and messy and mine. Shane can keep his lies and his empire and his hollow existence. I don't need to prove anything to anyone ever again." The report burned completely, the evidence of Shane's lies consumed by fire, released into smoke and memory. Maya felt no regret. The truth existed whether or not the paperwork did. And more importantly, she no longer needed Shane's failure to validate her success. She was enough. She had always been enough. Michael pulled her onto the couch, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance, listening to the house settle, existing in the peaceful aftermath of confrontation. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, that gentle Seattle rain that had welcomed Maya when she first arrived. Broken and hollow, convinced she was fundamentally flawed. "Do you remember the day we met?" Michael asked. Maya smiled. "You gave me coffee and terrible advice about load-bearing walls." "It wasn't terrible advice," Michael protested. "It was creatively interpreted." She laughed, the sound free and genuine. "You were nervous. You kept dropping your pen. You were beautiful. You kept looking at the door like you might run." "I was terrified," Maya admitted. "Terrified that I'd never be more than the woman Shane convinced me I was. Terrified that I'd spend the rest of my life as a walking failure, a cautionary tale, a woman who couldn't do the one thing women were supposed to do." And now? Maya thought about the question, thought about the boys upstairs, thought about the homes she'd designed for families who needed them, thought about the woman she'd become, stronger, wiser, more certain of her worth than she'd ever been in Shane's penthouse. Now I know that the only failure was believing him in the first place. Now I know that my worth has nothing to do with my ability to conceive and everything to do with how I treat people, how I build things, how I love. Now I know that I'm not the woman Shane said I was. I'm the woman I chose to become. Michael kissed her temple. I'm glad you chose to become her. Me too. They sat until the fire burned low and exhaustion pulled at their bones. Michael carried their empty teacups to the kitchen, while Maya checked the locks and turned off the lights. They climbed the stairs together, pausing to peek into the boys' room one more time, reassuring themselves that their sons were real and breathing and theirs. In their own bedroom, Maya changed into comfortable clothes and slid under the covers. Michael joined her, pulling her close, their bodies fitting together in the familiar way of people who'd learned each other's rhythms and needs and silent languages. I love you, Maya said into the darkness. I love you too, Michael replied. Thank you for trusting me with your broken pieces. Thank you for letting me help you put them back together. You didn't put me back together, Maya corrected gently. You just held space while I learned to do it myself. That's a better gift. She fell asleep thinking about Shane in his empty penthouse, surrounded by expensive things and hollow victories, probably drinking himself into oblivion, probably convincing himself he was the victim in a story where he was clearly the villain. She felt no satisfaction in his suffering, no triumph in his humiliation. She felt only gratitude that his cruelty hadn't destroyed her, that his lies hadn't become her truth, that his version of her story hadn't been the final chapter. Maya Lara had been called defective by a man too cowardly to face his own inadequacy. She'd been divorced and discarded and told she was worthless. She'd been the subject of gossip and pity and whispered cruelty, but she'd survived it all, and more than that, she'd thrived. She'd built a life that mattered. She'd created homes for families who needed them. She'd found love that was real and unconditional. She'd raised 4 sons who would grow up knowing their worth wasn't contingent on perfection or performance or meeting impossible standards. She'd proven that the only opinion that mattered was her own, and in the morning she would wake up to the sound of 4 boys arguing about breakfast, to Michael making terrible pancakes in the kitchen, to Tessa complaining about noise levels, to Patricia and James arriving with groceries and unsolicited but well-meaning advice. She would wake up to chaos and love and the beautiful imperfection of a life. Well-lived, Shane Martin would wake up alone, with his regrets and his lies and the slowly dawning realization that he'd thrown away the only real thing he'd ever had. And that, Maya thought as sleep pulled her under, was justice enough. The end.